Last time, we used cues from Conan, All Tomorrows, and I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream to rewrite the concept of the Force as well as the origin of alien races. Today, we'll be taking inspiration from Dune, Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Warhammer 40k, and Fullmetal Alchemist to cover the rise of humanity, lightsabers, and the existing governments in the galaxy. Without further ado, let's begin. Grimdark. Half off! If you'd like to see my progress as I make new content, enlist today through YouTube memberships or Patreon to become a soldier in the Grimdark Legion. My thanks to the men and women who've already served, whose names are listed here. You keep darkness at an affordable price. As the wars across the universe grew, entangling many alien races, the gruesome and cruel story of humanity would begin to be told. It is one of a small tribal race, doing its best to rise up against dominant misanthropic alien empires on both sides. Neither were kind to the hairless apes. In the Hutt Empire, which controlled half of the known galaxy in the area cynically named Free Space, human men were killed on the spot, and their women were taken as pleasure slaves, though not in the way one might assume. Hutts, as a race, are unique in the sense that they were far more mutated than other races made by our AI from the last episode. They have to eat more to survive, and while not having access to the Force in a normal way, they have a unique dark side connection that allows them to gain pleasant emotions from the agony of others. Without this, ironically, they themselves would be in agony, meaning only capable of negative or neurotic emotions, the anxiety literally causing heart failure at some point. While human men, they judge to be of poor quality due to the tendency towards depression, inducing anxiety, fear, and pain, in their women is considered a kind of psychedelic drug among their race. The reasons for this are currently unknown. They did the same to many alien races, but none more so than humans and Twi'leks. This gives our iconic imagery of a hedonistic Hutt race, but with more of a need for them to behave that way rather than the just cultural decadence. Our second human enslaving empire are experts enough in moral decay at this point in their history for anyone. That, of course, would be the Sith Empire. Their slavery of humanity was far more conventional, but then advanced to the point of horrid parody. A human or non-Sith pureblood race could be sold into slavery for any number of things. Oddly, the greatest holders of slaves were medical testing facilities, medical schools, and the military. This hinges on the key aspect of decadence which permeates the Sith culture at this time. They are a race whose hands are both covered in blood, but desperate to not get those same hands dirty. At one point, a seemingly meaningless human mining slave on an asteroid by the name of Contispex under the Sith Empire would begin a movement to change the history of the human race. The asteroid he mined on was covered in ice. One day, after working for 15 hours straight on his latest shift, he saw children playing with toy boats they had made from carving ice. Slowly over time, he rallied people under him under the idea of a free humanity, a republic where their race could build a future for human children. The rebellion to free the slaves used simple tactics of sign language as well as living courier-based communication. It was easy enough to take out the far more complex and thus delicate system of electronic communication around them, which the poorly trained obese Sith guards relied on. With only humans left on the planet, still with no way off, they began to construct their half-ice, half-metal ships, which the frigid cold of space would have no trouble keeping together. Eventually, they would travel far outside of the known galaxy to an underdeveloped, rich in natural resources planet called Coruscant. The Republican government would rise on this new world, innovating on Sith technology until it became distinctly human. After this, recruitment towards those enslaved as guinea pigs of the Empire would begin. These would also be made to look like simple slave rebellions. Here, they would learn of experiments being used to create super soldiers, harness the power of those called human Sith, or humans capable of harnessing the dark side, and several alien refugees who soon became believers in the cause due to them experiencing the same fate. A brief note on the humans who are called human Sith, or humans capable of harnessing the dark side. Something you might not know from our part 1 if you didn't watch it is that we have rewritten the light and dark side. So these human Sith are really just humans who found themselves in a position where they themselves accidentally contacted the dark side through a desanctification ritual, which is something we're actually going to go into a little more later in this episode. Among them would be the Zabrak, Mon Calamari, and Twilix. After 40 more years of life, Contispex was an old man with several legions of warriors, clad in the same hardened vibrosteel armor used to build their ships. Each legion consisted of the same super soldiers the Sith were experimenting to create, including small regiments of alien troops and dark side users going through the process. This would be the fear of real risk coming back to bite the oh-so-high and mighty Sith purebloods. Their leap in scientific progress would also bring them much of the technology we know of today, such as plasma cutters, blasters, and unique explosive gas used for sabotage of enemy ships or to force them into melee combat in close quarters with what would be far superior opponents in strength augmented by that super soldier program. At this time in history, after revealing themselves to be the enemies of slavery, they would soon earn the favor of the Jedi, who had been in hiding in free space due to the state of affairs at this time. The experiences the humans would have at this time in history would make them abolitionists, though abolitionism wouldn't necessarily carry over throughout the entirety of humanity, as we will see later in the episode. During this time, a Jedi Forge Master of Kyber Blades by the name of Ben Doe would study the technology of this new force, and after meditating on the will of the force, received a vision of the light side personified by a young boy with dirty blonde hair wielding a sword made of pure light, slaying a great shadowy serpent representing the dark side. Only a year into the Crusades against the Empire and the Republic of Free Humans consisted of Space Marines, Sith, Jedi, and countless soldiers willing to be the ground troops motivated by both a realistic sense of danger from their enemies as well as a duty to a cause they viewed as vital to their own futures. Top all of this off with the primitive lightsabers using power packs worn on the backs of Jedi, referred to as plasma swords, being given to Jedi troops with a kyber crystal being used in the heart of the blade to resonate it with the Force, thus stabilize the beam. One could think that nothing could stop them, and nothing did. Both the pureblood Sith and Hutts would become so near extinct by the end of what would become known as the Xenocide Crusades, and just a brief editor's and writer's note here, the reason Pious Day Crusades would not work anymore, of course, is because this was not motivated by religion, but by sort of ethnic, which would later become cultural causes. By the Xenocide Crusades, that if one were to encounter them today, they would still likely be from specific rich merchant families that only survived by chance or mission of not being in the territory of their home empires. In only 200 years, humanity had leaped military and medical technology light years ahead, while also becoming the most prominent race in the known galaxy. However, it's only after those races were gone that the hard times began. The common enemies were gone. The galactic empire was now far more than just humans. There was extreme reluctancy to renounce military power on the part of the acting Supreme Chancellor, who was the grandson of the previously mentioned Contispex, despite it now being peacetime, and an entire population taught to view authoritarianism as evil were now looking at home for tyrants to slay. They had no shortage of corrupt bureaucracy, systems of labor that were slavery in all but name, and of course a political ruling class that mimicked the effect of a royal family of Contispex, with each generation seemingly being more corrupt than the last. Eventually, this would lead to a horrific schism of civil war, splitting the known galaxy into several civilizations, with the three most prominent being the Galactic Republic, centered on Coruscant, which retained good relations with the Jedi, the Galactic Empire, which retained good relations with several dark side practitioners, including their once-hated ethnic enemies in the pureblood Sith race, and finally, the reemergence of the Hutt Empire as the Hutt Trade Alliance, which occupied a position in space called the Kessel Corridor, which would be the only way to travel from Republic into Imperial space. Another key feature of the Hutt Trade Alliance would be having diplomatic representatives in Republic as well as Imperial territory. Finally, what truly allowed this group to reach a point of prominence among its neighboring titans was its disproportionate production and involvement in a key ingredient of the medical field known as spice. Over time, they would also gain a monopoly on organized crime in both areas of space that would act as a makeshift intelligence agency. Now, in addition to this, you also have the countless worlds and societies simply left alone by both sides that also went through their own changes. These are races like the Trandoshans, the Mandalorians, the human offshoots known as the Chiss Ascendancy, who escaped long before all this, and the hybrid culture of the Zabrak human hybrids of Dathomir. And if you know about the Night Brothers and Night Sisters, you know that their culture is half human, half Zabrak, with the Night Brothers presenting in more of a Zabrak way, and the Night Sisters presenting in a more female way. We're not changing that from canon. Next time, if you want a part 3, I'll start going over all the Star Wars races and how I would do them. But for now, let's move on to lightsabers and going a bit deeper into Force abilities. No matter where you fall on the Force spectrum, if you want to bring your tabletop to life, you'll need today's sponsor, Ronin Craft. Ronin Craft is an independent 3D model printing service that specializes in both sci-fi and fantasy, making it your one-stop shop for all your speculative fiction needs. Because with Ronin Craft, you'll get quality that surpasses any master. As affairs in the galaxy stabilized, the Jedi were finally able to once again establish councils where they could retreat into themselves for leadership meetings, meditations, and importantly, martial advancement. This included strategy and technology. In the case of the previous plasma saber, multiple councils had been called on both distancing the Jedi image from a weapon used for countless bloodthirsty wars, and also advancing the weapon due to its many flaws as it was attached to a backpack as well as tube, meaning at this time some Jedi preferred to use older kyber blades, meaning blades forged from pure kyber crystal, despite them taking much longer to make as they provided more of a range of motion. Eventually, an advancement was made in such a way that only Force users could use a plasma saber through stabilization of the beam blade with telekinesis, and a lighter dark side ritual using the blood of the Jedi tied to its kyber crystal. Sadly, the preservers of light could not avoid war forever, and renewed battles with the Sith and their associated empire would take care of the final military advancement, which would push plasma sabers into becoming the new lightsabers. Eventually, Sith would copy this tactic, only with far darker dark side rituals, as well as alchemically created artificial kyber crystals forged from large-scale blood sacrifices. This makes the beam blade of Sith lightsabers both various shades of red or red-adjacent colors, in addition to making them more unstable, with the chance of breaking a more inexperienced Jedi's lightsaber beam blade. The reason for this is that the durability and power of a Jedi's lightsaber literally depends on their training, as well as their personal connection to the Force. Meanwhile, the amount of torture and blood sacrifice used to craft a Sith lightsaber's artificial kyber crystal gives it its strength. I like this because it makes it clear where each religion stands on the weapon. For the Jedi, this is a holy embodiment of the Force, meant to be used to strike down the enemies of all life in the galaxy. Even the name lightsaber, instead of just a new version of plasma sabers, comes from the fact that they don't want to be associated with the Pius Day Crusades, which, again, for us would not be the Pius Day Crusades, for us it would be the xenocide crusades, which were a mark of shame from their past. It also means that a Jedi Padawan saber, while still strong, say on par with that of a vibroblade, a Jedi Master saber is on par with that of a Beskar blade. In addition, for Jedi, I want to keep it vague what causes the sabers to be or change color. If you were playing in my rewrite like a tabletop setting, your lightsaber as a Jedi is basically a living being or extension of your personal relationship with the Force. Its color is representative of that, but as you grow and develop, so too will the living kyber crystal you are bloodbound to. Part of that is if your character were to level up while also going through a character arc or completing a task of great personal significance that leads to emotional maturity, it may very well change color to reflect your new outlook. Of course, this will be different for every person. Using basic color psychology I learned in 9th grade art class, a Jedi might start off associating the Force with the happiest memory of their childhood for some reason. This gave them a yellow crystal. But as they age, they learn to process more negative emotions, which lets them realize they don't have to feel good all the time to fight for good all the time. The hue of the lightsaber is now green, reflecting a balanced view, or maybe a dark blue for maturity. It's up to you, your tabletop, and your DM. Likewise, a person might be coming over from the dark side because they haven't gotten too deep into it yet. Their lightsaber color, once they truly become a Jedi, might be violet, reflecting the feelings of superiority they used to feel about the Force, but then they develop a complete understanding of the light side of the Force as stronger than the dark side, turning the lightsaber bronze, which in color psychology reflects strength. Again, it's up to you. Purple could also represent confusion, or just like Mace Windu, being on that verge of the light and dark side, or being able to integrate some of the dark side into the light. Moving back to the Sith, their lightsabers are tools crafted from tortured souls, their stem cells, and their blood. People have often asked me to make it so Sith don't only use red beam blades, so we'll say that within the spectrum of red, orange, yellow, and purple, a Sith's lightsaber color will change based on the thoughts of the Sith making the blood ritual to forge the artificial kyber crystal, sometimes referred to as an alchemist's stone. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is pretty much the only part where we're actually referencing Full Metal Alchemist. It's basically the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, if you're familiar with that anime. If they had noble intentions, for example, of what they thought they were going to do with the dark side power, then this especially could be a confusing factor, which makes the color just as subjective for the Sith in question as for the individual Jedi. However, Sith lightsabers do not change color, as they are merely tools used by Sith who do not view them as anything sacred beyond its ability to serve a function. If they want a stronger one, they are going to have to perform a second ritual. The reason most are red is that for most Sith lightsabers, Sith lightsaber forging is just a matter of passionate power, and also in addition to that, it is the most common color because the blood of the crystal is usually dominant. Which also, by the way, that's another factor that could change Sith lightsaber colors, is if you were dealing with a species that had a different color of blood, say yellow blood or purple blood, etc., etc. You could even have a possibility of a blue Sith lightsaber that had blue blood from a race. Regardless of any differences, my favorite change is the personalization of this iconic weapon, which also keeps it rare in the universe. The requirements for using a lightsaber aren't just finding out how to craft one or the mild use of telekinesis needed to stabilize the blade, but also being bloodbound to a kyber crystal as a person, whether Jedi or Sith. That means that only that one Sith or Jedi can use that one lightsaber. In the case of Jedi, they can only craft another if the previous one is destroyed, which would also be incredibly painful psychically. Hey, when you're an adult, no one even asks this question. They don't care, but I do. What is your favorite lightsaber color and why? Or what color would your lightsaber be? Tell me in the comments below. Also, your favorite dinosaur. I don't feel that gets enough attention as well. I do need to know your favorite dinosaur. I want to picture you riding your favorite dinosaur with your favorite lightsaber color. I'm on a lot of painkillers as I'm recording. Originally, I was going to get into more force powers here, but this video has already run on too long, so thank you for watching and have a lovely night. I really do appreciate you, and I appreciate all my patrons and all my donators. If I sound weird, it is because I have been recovering from a severe abdominal injury that may be a muscle pull, maybe a hernia, we don't really know. I have been getting to the point where I can sit up regularly, I can walk around regularly, but I can't jump. Can't jump yet. I am thankfully capable of doing upper body exercises, so I've been forced into bro mode. But it's just any time I move my lower body is just a nightmare, or when I digest food is also a nightmare. So we're going to be getting that fixed, and then I will definitely get back to more videos for all of you very soon.